everyone. Welcome back to Goodnight Stories. My name is Lyra, and I will be your guide into whatever book we decide to read tonight. From young readers to young adult novels, my hope is to give you a comfortable space to listen to a story while you work or doze. So, sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea. Tonight, we jump back into Erin Hunter's Forest of Secrets, the third book in the first Warrior series. Chapter 6. What? Fireheart was so astonished he could hardly speak. Are you saying Mistyfoot and Stonefur came from ThunderClan? Yes, Greypool gave her chest fur a couple of licks. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Fireheart was stunned. Did Oakheart steal them? He asked. Greypool's fur bristled, and she drew back her lips in a snarl. Oakheart was a noble warrior. He would never stoop to stealing kits. I'm sorry. Alarmed, Fireheart crouched and flattened his ears. I didn't mean... It's just hard to believe. Greypool sniffed, and her fur gradually lay flat again. Fireheart was still struggling with what she had just told him. If Oakheart hadn't stolen the kids, perhaps rogue cats had taken them from the ThunderClan camp? But why? And why abandon them so quickly, when the scent of their clan was still on their fur? Then, if they were ThunderClan kits, why did you look after them? He stammered. What clan would willingly take in enemy kits in a season when prey was already scarce? Greypool shrugged. Because Oakheart asked me to. He may not have been deputy back then, but he was a fine young warrior. I'd recently given birth to kits of my own, but all except one died in the bitter cold. I had plenty of milk to spare, and the poor little scraps would never have lived to see the sunrise if some cat hadn't cared for them. Their ThunderClan scent soon faded, she went on, and even if Oakheart hadn't told the truth about where they came from, I respected him enough to not ask any more questions. Thanks to Oakheart, and to me, they grew into strong kits, and now they're good warriors, a credit to their clan. Do Mistyfoot and Stonefur know all of this? Fireheart asked. Now listen to me, rasped Greypool. Mistyfoot and Stonefur know nothing, and if you tell them what I've just told you, I'll rip your liver out and feed it to the crows. She thrust her head forward and drew back her lips as she spoke, baring her teeth. In spite of her age, Fireheart flinched. They never doubted that I'm their real mother, Greypool growled. I like to think they even look a bit like me. As she spoke, Fireheart felt something stir in his mind, like a twitch of a fallen leaf that betrayed the mouse sheltering beneath it. He thought that what Greypool had just said should mean something to him, but when he tried to capture the thought, it scuttled away. They have always been loyal to RiverClan, Greypool insisted. I don't want that loyalty to be divided now. I've heard the gossip about you, Fireheart. I know you were once a kitty pet. You should understand, more than any cat, what it means to have a paw in two places. Fireheart knew he would never make any cat go through the uncertainties that he suffered himself about not fully belonging to his clan. I promise, I'll never tell them, he meowed solemnly. I swear it by StarClan. The old cat relaxed and stretched, her front paws extended and her rump in the air. I accept your word, Fireheart, she replied. I don't know if this has helped you at all, but it might explain why Oakheart would never let a ThunderClan cat harm Mistyfoot or Stonefur. Even if he claimed to know nothing about where they came from, he would have smelled the ThunderClan scent on them as clearly as I did. As far as they're concerned, they are loyal only to RiverClan, but it would seem that Oakheart's loyalties were divided on their behalf. I'm very grateful to you, Fireheart purred, trying to sound as respectful as he could. I don't know what this means in relation to what I have found out, but I really think it's important for both our clans. That's as may be, mewed Greypool. She frowned. But now that I've told you everything, you must leave our territory. Of course, Fireheart meowed. You won't even know I've been here. And in Greypool, he paused before thrusting his way out of the bush and held her pale yellow gaze for a moment. Thank you. Fireheart's mind was spinning as he returned to the camp. Mistyfoot and Stonefur had been ThunderClan blood, but they belonged entirely to RiverClan now, with no idea of their divided heritage. Blood loyalty and clan loyalty were not always the same, Fireheart reflected. His own kitty pet roots did not make his commitment to ThunderClan any less strong, and perhaps now that Mistyfoot had confirmed how Oakheart had died, Bluestar would be willing to accept that Tigerclaw had killed Redtail. Fireheart decided to ask her about Greypool's latest revelation, too. Bluestar might be able to tell him if a pair of kits had ever been stolen from the ThunderClan camp. When he reached the clearing, Fireheart made straight for the high rock. As he approached Bluestar's den, he heard two cats meowing together and picked up Tigerclaw's scent along with Bluestar's. Quickly, he pressed himself against the rock, hoping to stay out of sight, as the deputy shouldered his way out past the curtain of lichen that screened the mouth of the den. I'll try a hunting patrol toward the snake rocks, the dark tabby called over his shoulder. No cat has hunted there for a few days. Good idea, agreed Bluestar, following him out. Prey is still scarce. May StarClan grant the thaw comes soon. Tigerclaw grunted agreement and lopped off towards the warrior's den, not noticing Fireheart where he crouched by the rock. When he had gone, Fireheart padded up to the mouth of the den. Bluestar, he called, as the clan leader turned to go back inside. I'd like to talk to you. Very well, Bluestar meowed calmly. Come in. Fireheart followed her into the den. The curtain of lichen swung back into place, cutting off the bright snow light. In the dim interior, Bluestar sat facing him. What is it? She asked. Fireheart took a deep breath. You remember the story that Ravenpaw told, that Redtail killed Oakheart at the Battle of the Sunning Rocks? Bluestar stiffened. Fireheart, that is over, she growled. I told you before, I have reasons enough to be satisfied that this isn't true. I know, Fireheart bowed his head respectfully, but I've found out something new. Bluestar waited in silence. Fireheart couldn't tell what she was thinking. No cat killed Oakheart. Not Redtail, not Tigerclaw, he went on, nervously aware that it was too late now to change his mind. Oakheart died when a rock collapsed on top of him. Bluestar frowned. How do you know this? I went to see Ravenpaw again, Fireheart admitted, after the last gathering. He was ready for anger as he made his confession, but the clan leader remained calm. So that's why you were late, she observed. I had to find out the truth, Fireheart meowed quickly, and Wait a moment, Bluestar interrupted. Ravenpaw told you at first that Redtail killed Oakheart. Is he changing his story now? No, not at all, Fireheart promised. I misunderstood him. Redtail was partly responsible for Oakheart's death, because he drove him under the overhanging rock that collapsed on top of him. But he didn't mean to kill him, and that's what you couldn't believe, he reminded Bluestar, that Redtail would deliberately kill another cat. Besides, well, Bluestar sounded as calm as ever. I went across the river and spoke to a RiverClan cat, Fireheart confessed. Just to be sure, she told me that it's true. Oakheart died from the rock fall. He looked at his paws, bracing himself for Bluestar's fury that he had been trespassing on enemy territory, but when he looked up again, there was nothing in the leader's eyes except for intense interest. She gave him a slight nod, and Fireheart went on. So we know for a fact that Tigerclaw was lying about how Oakheart died. He didn't kill him himself in revenge for Redtail. The rockfall killed him. Isn't it possible that he's lying about Redtail's death as well? As he spoke, Bluestar began to look troubled, narrowing her eyes so that only the faintest sliver of blue showed in the dim light of the den. She let out a long sigh. Tigerclaw is a fine deputy, she murmured, and these are serious charges. I know, Fireheart agreed quietly, but can't you see, Bluestar, how dangerous he is? Bluestar sank her head onto her chest. She was silent for a long time that Fireheart wondered if he should leave, but she had not dismissed him. There's something else, he ventured, something strange about two of the RiverClan warriors. Bluestar looked up at that, her ears flicked forward. For a heartbeat, Fireheart hesitated to spread the rumors of a temperamental RiverClan elder, but his need to know the truth gave him the courage to go on. Ravenpaw told me that in the Sunning Rocks battle, Oakheart stopped Redtail from attacking a warrior named Stonefur. Oakheart said that no ThunderClan cat should ever harm Stonefur. I had a chance to speak to one of the RiverClan elders. She told me that Oakheart brought Mistyfoot and Stonefur to her when they were tiny kits. It was Leafbear, and she said that the kits would have died with no one to take care of them. Greypool, the elder, suckled them. She said that they had the scent of ThunderClan kits. Could that be true? Were kits ever stolen from our camp? For a few heartbeats, he thought Bluestar had not heard him. She was so still. Then she rose to her paws and padded forward a couple of paces until she stood almost nose to nose with him. "And you listened to this nonsense," she hissed. "I just thought I should—" "This isn't what I expect from you, Fireheart," Bluestar growled. Her eyes glittered like ice and her hackles were raised. "To go into enemy territory and listen to idle gossip, to believe what a RiverClan cat tells you? You would do better to think about your own duties than to come here telling tales about Tigerclaw." She studied him for a long moment. "Maybe Tigerclaw is right to doubt your loyalty." "I'm sorry," Fireheart stammered, "but I thought Greypool was telling the truth." Bluestar let out a long breath. All the interest she had shown before had vanished, leaving her expression cold and remote. "Go," she ordered. "Find yourself something useful to do, something that befits a warrior. Never, never mention this to me again. Do you understand?" "Yes, Bluestar." Fireheart began backing out of the den. "But what about Tigerclaw? Go!" Bluestar spat the command. Fireheart's paws scrabbled in the sand in his haste to obey. Once out of the den, he turned and hurtled across the clearing, only coming to rest when he had put several fox lengths between himself and Bluestar. He felt utterly bewildered. At first, Bluestar had seemed prepared to listen to him, but as soon as he mentioned the stolen ThunderClan kits, she had refused to hear any more. A sudden chill swept through Fireheart. What if Bluestar began to wonder how he had managed to speak with the RiverClan cats? What if she found out about Greystripe and Silverstream? And what about Tigerclaw? For a short time, Fireheart had let himself hope that he could make Bluestar understand how dangerous the deputy was. Thistles and thorns, he thought. Now she won't hear another word about Tigerclaw. I blew it. Chapter 7. Confused and unhappy, Fireheart made for the warrior's den. Before he reached it, he hesitated. He did not want to risk meeting Tigerclaw, and he wasn't in the mood for sharing tongues with his friends. Instead, almost unconsciously, he headed for the tunnel of fern that led to Yellowfang's den. Cinderpaw limped out and almost collided with him. Fireheart fell back on his haunches with a thump, and Cinderpaw skidded to a halt, spraying him with snow. "Sorry, Fireheart," she puffed. "I didn't see you there." Fireheart shook the snow off his coat. His heart felt suddenly lighter at the sight of Cinderpaw, her blue eyes sparkling with mischief and fur sticking out in all directions. This was how she used to look when she was his apprentice for a while. After the accident, Fireheart had been afraid that this Cinderpaw had vanished forever. "What's the hurry?" he asked. "I'm going out to look for herbs for Yellowfang," Cinderpaw explained. "So many cats have been ill, what with all this snow, that her stocks are getting very low. I want to find as much as I can before it gets dark." "I'll come and help you," Fireheart offered. Bluestar had told him to do something useful, and not even Tigerclaw could find fault if he went to collect herbs for the medicine cat. "Great!" Cinderpaw meowed happily. Side by side, they headed across the clearing toward the gorse tunnel. Fireheart had to slow his pace to match Cinderpaw's, but if she was aware of it, she didn't seem to mind. Just before they reached the tunnel, Fireheart heard the shrill voices of kits. He turned and stared at the branches of the fallen tree. Close to the elder's den, a group of kits had surrounded Broken Tail, who had been given a nest among the branches. Ever since Bluestar had offered to shelter Broken Tail, he had lived alone in his den, with warriors to guard him. Not many cats passed that way, and the kits had no reason to be anywhere near him. "Rogue! Traitor!" That was Cloudkit's voice raised in a jeering meow. Fireheart watched in alarm as the white kit darted forward, jabbed Broken Tail in the ribs with one paw, and scrambled back out of the range. One of the other kits copied him, squealing, "Can't catch me!" Darkstripe, whose turn it was to guard the blind cat, made no attempt to send the kits away. He sat a fox length away, watching with his paws tucked under him and a gleam of amusement in his eyes. Broken Tail swung his head from side to side in frustration, but with his cloudy, unseeing eyes, he could not retaliate. His dark tabby fur looked dull and patchy, and his broad face was scored with scars, some of them from the clawing that had ruined his eyes. There was no trace of the former arrogant and bloodthirsty leader now. Fireheart exchanged a worried glance with Cinderpaw. Many cats, he knew, thought Broken Tail deserved to suffer, but seeing the former leader so old and helpless, he could not help feeling a scrap of pity. Anger began to burn inside him as the taunting went on. "Wait for me," he mewed to Cinderpaw and hurried over toward the edge of the clearing. He saw Cloudkit pounce on the blind Tom's tail, worrying it with needle-sharp teeth. Broken Tail scrabbled away from him on unsteady legs and swiped one paw in his direction. In an instant, Darkstripe jumped to his paws, hissing, "Touch that kit, traitor, and I'll flay your skin in stripes." Fireheart was too angry to speak. Leaping toward Cloudkit, he grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and swung him around, away from Broken Tail. Cloudkit wailed in protest. "Stop it! That hurts!" Fireheart dropped him roughly into the snow and let out a low growl through bared teeth. "Go home," he ordered the other kits. "Go home to your mothers, now!" The kids stared at him wide-eyed with fear and then scuttled off to disappear into the nursery. "As for you," Fireheart hissed to Cloudkit. "Leave the kid alone," Darkstripe interrupted, patting to stand beside Cloudkit. "He's not doing any harm. Keep out of this, Darkstripe," growled Fireheart. Darkstripe shouldered past him, almost knocking him over, before stalking back to his prisoner. "Kitty pet," he sneered over his shoulder. Fireheart's muscles tensed. He wanted to leap at Darkstripe and force the insult back down his throat, but he stopped himself. This was no time for clan warriors to start fighting each other. Besides, he had to deal with Cloudkit. "Did you hear that?" he demanded, glaring down at the white kit. "Kitty pet?" "So?" Cloudkit muttered mutinously. "What's a kitty pet?" Fireheart gulped as he realized that Cloudkit had not yet learned what his origins meant to the clan. "Well, a kitty pet is a cat who lives with 2 legs, he began carefully. "Some clan cats don't believe that a cat who's born a kitty pet will ever make a good warrior, and that includes me, because like you, I was born in 2-leg place." As Fireheart spoke, Cloudkit's eyes grew wider and wider. "What do you mean?" he meowed. "I was born here." Fireheart stared at him. "No, you weren't," he meowed. "Your mother is my sister, Princess. She lives in a 2-leg nest. She gave you to the clan when you were very young so you could be a warrior." For a few moments Cloudkit stood rigid, as if he were a kit made of snow and ice. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. "I'm sorry," Fireheart meowed. "I thought you knew. I thought Brindleface would have told you." Cloudkit backed away a couple of tail lengths. The shock in his blue eyes was slowly replaced with cold understanding. "So that's why the other cats hate me," he spat. "They think I'll never be any good because I wasn't born in this dump of a forest. It's stupid." Fireheart struggled to find the right words to reassure him. He couldn't help remembering how excited Princess had been when she gave her son to the clan, and how he had promised her that Cloudkit would have a wonderful life ahead of him. Now he was forcing Cloudkit to think about his past, and the difficulties he would have before being accepted by the clan. What if the kit began to think that Fireheart and Princess had made the wrong decision? Fireheart sighed. "It may be stupid, but that's the way it is. I should know. Listen," he explained patiently. "Warriors like Darkstripe think being a kitty pet is something bad. It just means we have to work twice as hard to make them see that kitty pet blood is nothing to be ashamed of." Cloudkit straightened up. "I don't care," he mewed. "I'm going to be the best warrior in the clan. I'll fight any cat who says I'm not. I'll be brave enough to kill outlaws like old Broken Tail." Fireheart was relieved to see Cloudkit's spirit overcoming the shock of his discovery, but he wasn't sure that the kit really understood the meaning of the warrior code. "There's more to being a warrior than killing," he warned Cloudkit. "A true warrior, the best warrior, isn't cruel or mean. He doesn't claw an enemy who can't fight back. Where's the honor in that?" Cloudkit ducked his head, not meeting Fireheart's eyes. Fireheart hoped he had said the right thing. Looking around for Cinderpaw, he saw that she had gone up to Broken Tail and was checking his tail where Cloudkit had worried it. There's no damage, she mewed to the blinded Tom. Broken Tail crouched motionless, his ruined eyes fixed on his paws, and did not respond. Reluctantly, Fireheart went over and nudged the old cat to his paws. Come on, he meowed. Let's get you back to your den. Broken Tail turned in silence and let Fireheart guide him back to the leaf-lined hollow under the dead branches. Darkstripe watched them shuffle past with a contemptuous flick of his tail. Right, Cinderpaw, Fireheart meowed when Broken Tail was settled. Let's go find those herbs. Where are you going? Cloudkit piped up, bouncing over to them with all his energy restored. Can I come? When Fireheart hesitated, Cinderpaw mewed. Oh, let him come, Fireheart. He only gets into trouble because he's bored. Whoa, wrong voice. Oh, let him come, Fireheart. He only gets into trouble because he's bored. And we could do with some more help. Cloudkit's eyes gleamed with pleasure, and a loud purr rose from his throat, an enormous sound to come from his small, fluffy body. Fireheart shrugged. All right, but put one paw wrong and you'll be back in the nursery before you can say mouse. Limping steadily, Cinderpaw led the way along the ravine to the hollow where the apprentices had their training sessions. Already the sun was beginning to go down, casting long blue shadows across the snow. Cloudkit scampered ahead of them, peering into holes in the rocks and stalking imaginary prey. How can you find herbs with all snow on the ground? Fireheart asked. Won't everything be frozen? There'll still be berries, Cinderpaw pointed out. Yellowfang told me to look for juniper. That's good for coughs and belly aches. And broom to make poultices for broken legs and wounds. Oh, and alder bark for toothaches. Berries? Cloudkit skittered sideways toward them. I'll find lots for you. He dashed away again in the direction of a clump of bushes growing up the side of the hollow. Cinderpaw flicked her tail in amusement. He's keen, she remarked. Once he's apprenticed, he'll learn quickly. Fireheart made a non-committal noise in his throat. Cloudkit's energy reminded him of Cinderpaw when she was first made apprentice, except Cinderpaw would never have taunted a helpless cat like blind Broken Tail. Well, if he's my apprentice, he'd better start listening to me, he muttered. Oh, yeah? Cinderpaw gave Fireheart a teasing look. You'll be a really tough mentor. All your apprentices will be trembling in their fur. Fireheart met her laughing eyes and felt himself relaxing. As usual, being with Cinderpaw was lifting his spirits. He would stop worrying about Cloudkit and get on with the job they had come to do. Cinderpaw! Cloudkit called from farther along the hollow. There are berries here. Come and look. Fireheart craned his neck and saw the white kit crouching beneath a small, dark-leaved bush that pushed its way up between two rocks. Bright scarlet berries grew close to the stems. They look tasty, Cloudkit mewed as the two cats drew nearer. He stretched his jaws wide to take a hungry mouthful. At the same moment, a gasp came from Cinderpaw. To Fireheart's amazement, she shot forward, propelling herself over the snow as fast as her injured leg would allow. No, Cloudkit, she yelled. She barreled into the kit, bowling him over. Cloudkit squealed in shock, and the two cats scuffled together on the ground. Fireheart bounded over, anxious that Cloudkit might hurt the injured Cinderpaw. But as he reached them, she pushed the kit off her and sat up, panting. Did you touch one? She demanded. No, Cloudkit stammered, puzzled. I was only... Look. Cinderpaw shoved him around until his nose was a mouth's length from the bush. Fireheart had never heard her sound so fierce. Look, but don't touch. That's you. The berries are so poisonous they are called death berries. Even one could kill you. Cloudkit's eyes were round as a full moon. Speechless for once, he gazed horrified at Cinderpaw. All right, she mewed more gently, giving his shoulder a couple of comforting licks. It didn't happen this time, but take a good look now so you don't make that mistake again. And never, do you hear me, never eat anything you don't know what it is. Yes, Cinderpaw, Cloudkit promised. Go on looking for berries, then. Cinderpaw nudged the kit to his paws. And call me as soon as you find anything. Cloudkit padded off, glancing back over his shoulder once or twice as he went. Fireheart couldn't remember seeing him so subdued. Bold as the kit was, he had received a real shock. It's a good thing you were here, Cinderpaw, he meowed, feeling a pang of guilt that he hadn't known enough to warn Cloudkit. You learned such a lot from Yellowfang. She's a good teacher, Cinderpaw replied. She shook several clumps of snow off her fur and began patting up the hollow after Cloudkit. Fireheart walked beside her, once more slowing his pace to match hers. This time, Cinderpaw noticed. You know, my leg has healed as much as it ever will, she meowed quietly. I'll be sorry to leave Yellowfang's den, but I can't stay there forever. She turned to look at Fireheart. All the mischief had faded from her eyes. Instead, there was pain and uncertainty in the blue depths. I don't know what I'll do. Fireheart stretched over to her and rubbed his face comfortingly against hers. Bluestar will know. Maybe, Cinderpaw shrugged. Ever since I was a tiny kit, I wanted to be just like Bluestar. She's so noble, and she's given her whole life to the clan. But Fireheart, what can I give now? I don't know, Fireheart admitted. The life of a cat could be followed clearly through the clan, from kit to apprentice to warrior, sometimes to queen, and then retired to an honorable old age among the elders. Fireheart had no idea what happened to a cat who was injured too badly for the warrior life. For the long patrols, the hunting, and fighting that were required of a warrior. Even the queens who cared for the kits in the nursery had all been warriors once, with skills that enabled them to feed and defend their little ones. Cinderpaw was brave and intelligent, and before her accident she had shown endless energy and commitment to the clan. Surely that couldn't all be thrown away. This is Tigerclaw's fault, Fireheart thought darkly. He laid the trail to lead to her accident. You should go to Bluestar, he suggested out loud. Ask her what she thinks. Perhaps I will. Cinderpaw shrugged. Cinderpaw! A shrill meow from Cloudkit interrupted them. Come and see what I found. Coming, Cloudkit. Cinderpaw limped away, mewing good-humoredly to Fireheart as she went. Maybe it's deadly nightshade this time. Fireheart watched her go. He hoped that Bluestar would be able to find a way to give Cinderpaw a worthwhile life within the clan. Cinderpaw was right. Bluestar was a great leader, and not just in battle. She truly cared for all her cats. Knowing that, Fireheart felt even more confused when he remembered her reaction to Greypool's news. Why had Bluestar acted so strangely when he told her that 2 RiverClan warriors had been ThunderClan kits? The story had outraged her so much that she was closing her eyes to the danger from Tigerclaw. Fireheart shook his head as he padded slowly after Cinderpaw. There was deeply buried mystery surrounding those cats, and he was beginning to feel that it might be beyond his power to ever understand it. Chapter 8. Fireheart crouched in the nursery, watching a litter of kits suckle their mother. For a moment he was filled with excitement to see the tiny creatures who were the future of the clan. Then something stirred in his mind. ThunderClan had no kits as young as these. Where had they come from? He let his gaze travel from the kits to their mother and saw nothing but rippling pelt of silver gray. The queen had no face. Fireheart choked back a cry of horror. As he stared, the silvery shape of the queen began to fade, leaving nothing but darkness. The kits squirmed and let out squeals of terror and loss. A bitterly cold wind rose and swept away the warm scents of the nursery. Fireheart leapt to his paws and tried to follow the sound of the helpless kits, lost in the wind-blown darkness. I can't find you, he wailed. Where are you? Then a light appeared, soft and golden. Fireheart could see another cat sitting in front of him, with the tiny kits sheltered between her paws. It was Spotted Leaf. Fireheart opened his mouth to speak to her. She gave him a look of infinite kindness before the image vanished, and Fireheart found himself scrabbling among the mossy bedding in the warrior's den. You have to make such a racket, Dustpelt was grumbling. No cat can get a wink of sleep. Fireheart sat up. Sorry, he mumbled. He couldn't help glancing toward the center of the den where Tigerclaw slept. The deputy had complained before about the noise Fireheart made when he was dreaming. To his relief, Tigerclaw wasn't there. Fireheart could see from the light that filtered through the branches that the sun was already above the trees. He gave himself a quick wash, trying to hide from Dustpelt how much the dream had shaken him. Frightened, lonely kits whose mother faded away. Was it a prophecy? And if so, what could it mean? There were no kits that young in the clan now, or was it about the former ThunderClan kits, Mistyfoot and Stonefur? Had their real mother disappeared somehow? While he was washing, Dustpelt gave him a final glare and pushed his way out through the branches, leaving Fireheart alone except for Longtail and Running Wind, sleeping in their usual places. There was no sign of Graystripe, Fireheart noticed, and his bedding was cold, as if he had been out since dawn, gone to meet Silverstream, he guessed. He tried to understand his friend's strength of feeling, but he couldn't help worrying and longing for the old, uncomplicated days when they were apprentices together. Fireheart poked his head out of the branches to see the snow-covered camp glittering under the cold winter sun. No sign of a thaw yet. Beside the nettle patch, Sandstorm was crouching over a piece of fresh kill. "Mornin', Fireheart," she greeted him cheerfully. "If you want to eat, you'd better do it quickly. There's still some prey left." Fireheart realized that his belly was aching with hunger. It felt as if he hadn't eaten for a moon. He bounded over to the pile of fresh kill and saw that Sandstorm was right. Only a few pieces remained. He chose a starling and took it back to the nettle patch to eat with Sandstorm. "We'll have to hunt today," he meowed between mouthfuls. "Whitestorm and Mousefair have already gone out with their new apprentices," Sandstorm told him. "Brightpaw and Thornpaw couldn't wait." Fireheart wondered if Graystripe had taken his apprentice out too, but a moment later Brackenpaw emerged alone from the apprentice's den. The light brown tabby looked around before trotting over to Fireheart. "Have you seen Graystripe?" he called. "Sorry," Fireheart shrugged. "He was gone when I woke up." "He's never here," Brackenpaw mewed sadly. "If this goes on, Swiftpaw will be a warrior before me. Brightpaw and Thornpaw too." "Rubbish," Fireheart meowed. He suddenly felt angry with Graystripe and his obsession with the RiverClan she-cat. No warrior had the right to neglect his apprentice like this. "You're doing fine, Brackenpaw. You can come out hunting with me if you like." "Thanks," purred Brackenpaw, beginning to look happier. "I'll come too," offered Sandstorm, gulping down the last of her meal and running her tongue around her jaws. She took the lead as the three cats made their way along the gorse tunnel. "Now, Brackenpaw," Fireheart meowed when they had reached the edge of the training hollow. "Where's a good place to look for prey?" "Under the trees," replied Brackenpaw, pointing with a flick of his tail. "That's where mice and squirrels come for nuts and seeds." "Good," meowed Fireheart. "Let's see if you're right." They headed farther around the hollow. On the way, they passed Brindleface, watching fondly as her kits scrabbled about in the snow. They needed to stretch their legs, she explained. "All the snow has made them restless." Cloudkit was sitting under the yew bush with a couple of his littermates, explaining importantly that those were deathberries, and they must never, never eat them. Feeling amused by the young kit's seriousness, Fireheart meowed a greeting as he went by. Beneath the trees at the top of the hollow, the snow was not so thick, and streaks of brown earth showed amid the white. As the three cats crept forward, Fireheart heard the scuttering of tiny paws and scented a mouse. Automatically, he dropped into a hunting crouch and slid forward, barely putting any weight on his paws so as not to alarm his prey. The mouse remained unaware of the danger, its back to him as it nibbled on a fallen seed. When Fireheart was a tail length away, he sprang and turned back triumphantly to his friends with the prey in his jaws. "Good catch," called Sandstorm. Fireheart scraped earth over his kill so he could collect it later. "The next one's yours, Brackenpaw," he meowed. Brackenpaw raised his head proudly and began to stalk forward, his eyes darting from side to side. Fireheart spotted a blackbird pecking among the berries at the foot of a holly bush, but this time he held back. The apprentice noticed the bird almost as soon as Fireheart did. Stealthily, paw by paw, he crept up on it. His haunches rocked from side to side as he readied himself to pounce. Watching, Fireheart thought he held back a heartbeat too long. The blackbird sensed him and fluttered upward, but Brackenpaw hurled himself after it with a mighty leap and batted it out of the air. Keeping one paw on his prey, he turned to look at Fireheart. "I got my timing wrong," he admitted. "I waited too long, didn't I?" "Maybe," Fireheart replied, "but don't look so upset. You caught it, and that's what counts." "When you get back, you can take it to the elders," meowed Sandstorm. Brackenpaw brightened up at that. "Yes, he began. He was interrupted by a shrill, terrified wailing that came from the direction of the hollow. Fireheart spun around. That sounds like a kit," with Sandstorm and Brackenpaw at his side. He raced toward the sound. Bursting out of the trees, he launched himself toward the crest of the hollow and looked down. "Great Star Clan," Sandstorm gasped. Just below the three cats loomed a bulky black and white animal. Fireheart picked up the rank scent of a badger. He had never seen one out in the open before, although he had often heard them shuffling noisily in the bushes. With one massive hook-clawed paw, it was reaching into a gap between two rocks where Cloudkit was cowering. "Fireheart," he wailed, "help me!" Fireheart felt as if every hair on his body was bristling. He launched himself down into the hollow, his front paws outstretched for the attack. He was dimly aware of Sandstorm and Brackenpaw at his heels. Fireheart raked his claws down the badger's side, and the huge beast rounded on him with a roar, jaws snapping. It was fast. It might even have caught Fireheart if Brackenpaw hadn't leapt from the side, clawing for its eyes. The badger whipped its head around to where Sandstorm had sunk her teeth into one of its back legs. Kicking out strongly, it threw her off, and she rolled into the snow. Fireheart dashed in again to claw the badger's flank. Drops of scarlet blood fell onto the snow. The badger growled, but it was backing away now, and as Sandstorm got to her paws and advanced, spitting, it turned and lumbered off up the ravine. Fireheart spun around to Cloudkit. "Are you hurt?" Cloudkit crept out from the cleft in the rock, trembling uncontrollably. "No." Fireheart felt shaky with relief. "What happened? Where's Brindleface?" "I don't know. We were all playing, and then I turned around and I couldn't see any of the others. I thought I'd come and find you, and then there was the badger." He let out a terrified mew and crouched down with his head on his paws. Fireheart was stretching his neck to give him a comforting lick when he heard Sandstorm say, "Fireheart, look." Fireheart turned. Brackenpaw was lying on his side, blood seeping from his hind leg in the snow. "It's nothing," he grunted, bravely trying to get to his paws. "Stay still while we look," Sandstorm ordered. Fireheart rushed over and examined the wound. To his relief, the slash on Brackenpaw's leg was long but not deep, and the bleeding had nearly stopped. "You were lucky, thanks StarClan," he meowed. "And you saved me from a nasty bite. It was a brave thing to do, Brackenpaw." The apprentice's eyes shone at Fireheart's praise. "It wasn't really brave," he mewed shakily. "I didn't have time to think." "A warrior couldn't have done better," meowed Sandstorm. "What's a badger doing out in daylight? They always hunt by night." "It must be hungry like us," Fireheart guessed. "Otherwise it wouldn't attack something as big as Cloudkit." He turned back to the kit and nudged him gently with his paws. "Come on. Let's get you back to camp." Sandstorm helped Brackenpaw to get up and padded beside him as he limped to the top of the hollow and toward the ravine. Fireheart followed with Cloudkit, who kept very close to him. As they reached the ravine, Brindleface burst out of it, frantically calling Cloudkit's name. Other cats came hurrying behind her, drawn out of the camp by her panic-stricken wailing. Fireheart spotted Running Wind and Dustpelt, then his heart sank as Tigerclaw followed them out of the tunnel. Brindleface sprang at Cloudkit and covered him with anxious licks. "Where have you been?" she scolded. "I've been looking for you everywhere. You shouldn't run away like that." "I didn't," Cloudkit protested. "What's going on?" Tigerclaw shouldered his way to the front of the group of cats. Fireheart explained, while Brindleface continued to smooth down Cloudkit's ruffled fur. "We've drove the badger off," he told the deputy. "Brackenpaw was very brave." All the while he was speaking, Tigerclaw stared at him with fierce amber eyes, but Fireheart held his head high. This time he had no reason to feel guilty. "You'd better go to Yellowfang and have that leg seen to," the deputy grunted to Brackenpaw. "As for you," he swung around and loomed threateningly over Cloudkit. "What were you doing, putting yourself in danger like that? Do you think the warriors have nothing better to do than rescue you?" Cloudkit flattened his ears. "I'm sorry, Tigerclaw. I didn't mean to get into danger." "Didn't mean to? Has no cat taught you any better than to go wandering away like that?" "He's only a kid," Brindleface protested mildly, turning her gentle green gaze on the deputy. Tigerclaw drew his lips back in a snarl. "He's caused more trouble already than all the rest of the kits put together," he growled. "It's time he learned a lesson. He can do some real work for a change." Fireheart opened his mouth to object, for once Cloudkit hadn't meant to cause trouble. His bad fright had been punishment enough for straying away from Brindleface. But Tigerclaw was still talking. "You can go and look after the elders," he ordered. "Clear out their dirty bedding and fetch clean moss. Make sure they have enough fresh kill and go over their goats for ticks." "Ticks!" exclaimed Cloudkit, losing the last of his fear and outrage. "I'm not doing that. Why can't they see to their own ticks?" "Because they're elders," Tigerclaw hissed. "You need to start understanding a lot more about the ways of the clan, if you ever want to be an apprentice." He glared at Cloudkit. "Go on, and keep at it until I tell you to stop." Cloudkit looked mutinous for a moment longer, but not even he would defy Tigerclaw twice. He met the deputy's glare with hot blue eyes, and then ran off toward the tunnel. Brindleface let out a mew of distress and followed him. I always said bringing kitty pets into the clan was a bad idea, Tigerclaw growled to Dustpelt. He glared at Fireheart as he spoke, as if he was daring the young warrior to protest. Fireheart looked away. Come on, Brackenpaw, he mewed, swallowing his anger. There was no point getting into a fight. Let's get you to Yellowfang. I'll go back and see if I can find our prey, offered Sandstorm. We don't want that badger to get it. She started to scramble back up the ravine. Fireheart meowed his thanks after her and set off for the camp with Brackenpaw. The apprentice was limping quite badly and looked tired. As they approached the gorse tunnel, Fireheart was surprised to see Broken-Tail stumbling out with Yellowfang at his side. 2 guards, Darkstripe and Longtail, followed closely. We must be mad taking him out like this, Longtail grumbled. What if he runs off? Runs off, rasped Yellowfang. I suppose you think hedgehogs can fly. He's not running anywhere, you stupid furball. Carefully she cleared the snow from a smooth rock and guided Broken-Tail to it. He settled down with his blind face raised to the sun and sniffed the air. It's a fine day, Yellowfang murmured, curling her scrawny body close to his. Fireheart had never heard her sound so gentle. Soon the snow will melt and New Leaf will be here. Prey will be good and fat. You'll feel better then. Listening, Fireheart recalled what no other cat knew, that Yellowfang was Broken-Tail's mother. Even Broken-Tail himself didn't know, and now he gave no sign that he had heard Yellowfang's kind words. Fireheart winced at the pain in the medicine cat's eyes. She had been forced to give Broken-Tail up when he was born because medicine cats were forbidden to have kits, and later she had blinded him to save her adopted clan from the rogue cat's attack. But she still loved him, although she meant no more to him than any other cat in ThunderClan. Fireheart could almost have yowled in sympathy with her. I'll have to tell Tigerclaw about this, Darkstripe meowed fussingly, pacing at the foot of the rock where the cat sat. He didn't give any orders to let the prisoner leave the camp. Stalking up to him, Fireheart pushed his muzzle into Darkstripe's face. Bluestar was clan leader last time I looked, he spat. And who do you think she's going to listen to, you or the medicine cat? Darkstripe reared up on his back legs, his lips drawn back to show his fangs. Behind him, Fireheart heard Brackenpaw hiss an alarm. He tensed, ready for the older warrior to strike, but before a fight could break out, Yellowfang interrupted them with a furious growl. Stop this nonsense! What's happened to Brackenpaw? Her flattened face appeared over the edge of the rock, creased with worry. He was clawed by a badger, Fireheart told her with a last glare at Darkstripe. The old medicine cat jumped down stiffly and inspected Brackenpaw's leg, sniffing all along the wound. You'll live, she grunted. Go to my den, Cinderpaw's there, and she'll give you some herbs to press on that. Thank you, Yellowfang, Brackenpaw meowed and limped off. Fireheart followed, but before he entered the gorse tunnel, he looked back. Yellowfang had climbed back onto the rock and was sitting with her flank pressed close against Broken-Tail, gently licking his fur. Fireheart could just hear her rasping the soft noises that a queen would make to her kits, but Broken-Tail was as unresponsive as ever. He would not even turn to the she-cat and share tongues with her. Sadly, Fireheart padded into the tunnel. There were few bonds stronger than the ones between a mother and her kits. Yellowfang clearly still felt that bond, even after all the grief that Broken-Tail had caused, killing his father, destroying his own clan with his bloodthirsty leadership, attacking ThunderClan with a band of rogue cats. But in one part of Yellowfang's mind, he was still her kit. So how, Fireheart wondered, had Mistyfoot and Stonefur been separated from their mother? Why had Oakheart brought them to River Clan? And most of all, why had no ThunderClan cats tried to find them? And that is where we will stop for the night. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and I hope you have a good evening and a good night. Till next time, my friends. Take care.